Our invocation that inspired the circle window. They drew a circle and shut me out, a heretic, a rebel, a thing to flout. But love and I had the wit to win. We drew a circle and took them in. We're about to sing a hymn. Some logistics real quick. You can keep playing them. It's logistics music. But because of some tech issues, we're going to be streaming this service live. So just be aware if you come too close to the chancel that someone will see you. So let's go ahead and rise. And if you're watching this at home, stand wherever you are. We're going to sing a hymn. This hymn was written by people who did not understand where we live in terms of harvesting. So on Thanksgiving, we do this, but Lee rewrote the words to make them match better. I invite you to sing.
Give thanks for the rice and the crawfish to eat, for satsumas and shrimp and the break in the heat, for the sun and the dew and the sweet sugar cane, for the rose and the song and the harvest again. Give thanks for the mills and the farms of our land, for craft and the strength in the work of our hands, for the beauty our artists and poets have wrought, for the hope and affection our friendships have brought. Give thanks for the homes that with kindness are blessed, for seasons of plenty and well-deserved rest, for our country extending from sea unto sea, as we work to make it a land for the free.
And with those words, we welcome you to worship here at the Unitarian Church of Baton Rouge. It is good to be together in worship, whether you are joining us in the sanctuary or joining us online. We're glad to have you with us. I'm Reverend Eric Poza, interim minister, pleased to serve the church alongside our senior minister, Reverend Nathan Ryan, who will be leading today's service. Also pleased to be joined by Lee, our music director, Trey, our choral director, and so many volunteers helping to make the worship happen today, including Robin in the tech deck, and Kathy and Debbie, thank you for song leading. There is so much that's happening in the life of this congregation. I hope some of you were here over the last hour or so to experience some of it in that activities happening in our courtyard in between the two services, and those will, of course, be continuing on future Sundays as well. So if you didn't get a chance to join today, please feel free to do so on other Sundays as well. And we have other activities that are ongoing, including a volunteer opportunity to work with the Holy Grill. Our congregation has a tradition of supporting them every year, and we're looking for volunteers. This is for the first week of December, the first full week of December, December 6th through 10th. We're going to be serving lunch between 12 and 12:30. There is sign-up sheet available. I know it was out before service. I think it will be out after this service as well, so please check in on that. We also have, for those who are newer to our congregation and or want to learn more about us, perhaps you're considering becoming a member of the congregation. Our Roots class, which is our prospective member class and a chance to learn more about our faith and our congregation, is going to be starting up after Thanksgiving. That's going to be 3 consecutive Tuesday evenings starting November 30th. And contact our office if you'd like to become involved in that. And we have a project we started a couple of weeks ago, our homecoming wall, where we're inviting people symbolically to make dolls. We have some dolls available in the foyer that you could pick up, decorate if you want to symbolize you, put your name on it, and then affix it to that wall so that you can mark your having returned into our physical space when you're ready to do so. And we look forward to seeing the dolls increasing in number over the time that we'll be doing this project. It is good to worship together. Welcome.
I do want to emphasize that Roots class. If you haven't taken it, I'd encourage you to take it. It's pretty good. So all this month, we are talking about who we are as a congregation. That's kind of the theme we laid out for November. And it occurred to me that some of you may not know where we came from. So I thought we'd take a few minutes to just talk about the history of this church, mostly the history of the buildings of this church, because that's easier to mark. So it actually started from a group in the 1940s at LSU. I'm assuming they're professors, but I don't know that. They formed themselves the Channing Club. So this is named after William Ellery Channing, who is the founding minister of the American Unitarian Association. So they met for a few years, and in 1951, they gathered with the minister at First Unitarian Church in New Orleans, Albert Orlando, at the Heidelberg Hotel, which is now the Hilton downtown, and they signed the founding documents there. 5 of the people who attended, I believe, were the original founders who signed it. We approached the Hilton and asked if they would be interested in putting up a plaque because we think it would double their hotel occupancy, and they declined. I don't have the proof of that, but I know for certain if people knew this church started at that hotel, they'd be booked every night. Anyway, the small group of founders started what they then called the Unitarian Fellowship of Baton Rouge. Later, they changed the name to church. And they originally would meet in the old state capitol, and I'm not so familiar with the theological and political undertones of the Spanish War veterans, but the Spanish War veterans got a load of the liberal theology that was being preached, and we got kicked out of there. We went to a series of other places. One of them was also bear in mind, this is like 20 to 50 people, not the 300 to 500 we have now. So it's a much smaller group of people who made the church exist. Eventually, we wound up renting at the YWCO, and one of the members on a Sunday preached on the Emmett Till case and on the Emmett Till murder. And there were some of the founders called this, described it that there were certain Southern gentlemen who stood in the back of the worship service, and at the end of it, we were kicked out of there. And so the congregation continued to sort of be nomadic. Eventually, we bought a house that was, closer to downtown, but the city destroyed it because they wanted to put an interstate in its place. So we got a chunk of money. And so one of the things you have to know is this church has always sort of opted for building for the future and for growth. They had a chunk of money, and instead of buying a building to house the amount of people that they could fit, they bought this plot of land, which at the time was out beyond the edge of the city. I mean, the airport was that way. I'm pointing online, people. There's the river is where I'm pointing, and the airport's basically there. So they bought a plot of land outside of the city, and they instead rented a space, according to one of the people from our history documents, that was only tolerable because they knew it was temporary. And that tolerable place was at the intersection of Jefferson and Government. There was no money left over to build the building on this land, so they wrote a letter to every Unitarian church in the country asking them for $10. About 100 churches wrote back and gave us about $1,000. Some of the churches were pretty mad at us. One minister wrote a letter to the president of the association complaining about us. Some refused to give us money because they assumed we were segregated. Some refused to give us money because they heard we were integrated. And actually, if you read the history in the archives, we actually sent a $10 check to that church and said, yes, we are integrated, are you? But so anyway, after that money came in, we built what was then the Assembly Hall, which is where worship service happened. It's now the Fellowship Hall. And then in the late 80s, we built this sanctuary, which according to accounts, dwarfed the number of people in it because it was so kind of big and the gathered congregation was so much smaller than it is today. Then in 1999, we expanded the RE and built some office space. And then more recently, we raised the chancel, put in new carpets, got new refurbished chairs. We have a whole AV system that allows you to see this online, to let you hear this in a better way. And we redid the parking lot, put in new drainage. So that's kind of what brings us to now. This church has always had a long history of building for the future, kind of always thinking about what would come next. So it's a little bit of confession time. I wrote this sermon early in the week, which was a mistake, and I neglected to include 3 things. And because I ran out of time, and I'm not so skilled at sort of sneaking them into the body of the service in a way that you won't notice, I kind of stuck them on at the end as these awkward non sequiturs into different chunks. So there will be 3 of these throughout the service. They're going to be about Kyle Rittenhouse, about our monthly hymn, Busca el Amor, and about me being called to the church. And so this first non sequitur is, I know that some of you are likely upset about the Kyle Rittenhouse verdict. We don't have a lot of time today to devote to it. Instead, I just want to remind us, and maybe I'm just talking about reminding just me, that when I see something that feels unjust, it might very well be because the system we have inherited was set up to be unjust. By design, in this country, those who aligned with the enslaver were more protected than those who aligned with the enslaved. I expect a system that was set up this way to be unjust. It means we need to be open to seeing it when the injustice happens. We need to be a church that can first see it, because seeing it is the diagnosis that can lead to treatment before we can then change it. Just know that we have Unitarian Universalists in Kenosha right now who are working hard to bring peace and justice to their community.
Well, we share with one another in so many ways as we worship together. Let us make a personal expression of the sharing of what we bring with us as we come together to worship. If you have something on your mind, your heart, that you would share symbolically, we're going to invite you to come forward along the side walls. Come to take a stone and place it in the basin of our chalice. The tables are open. Please come forward. And we light the flame in our chalice, symbol of our freely covenanted Unitarian Universalist faith, saying together, with hope to make this a better world, we light this flame. Its light is a symbol of the power of love.
From all that dwell below the skies, let songs of hope and faith arise. Let peace, goodwill on earth be sung through every land.
the Unitarian Church of Baton Rouge is known as the church that shows up. Self-reflection and decades-long dedication to taking action on social justice issues such as racial equality, poverty, LGBTQ rights, reproductive justice, gun violence prevention, policing and criminal justice reform, voting rights and immigration policies earned us this name.
This name holds special meaning for us, as not only was it given to us by our community partners at Together Baton Rouge, but it also describes how we engage with one another, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. We are constantly seeking new ways to truly live up to our name.
Showing up is a spiritual practice for us. Over the past 20 years, our church has been affected by a number of major natural disasters, including major hurricanes and flooding. We've shown up for each other through trauma response, flood mitigation measures, provision of housing and transportation, and financial support.
The soil in our community, while still fallow in some places, is still rich ground for creating a racially integrated congregation and for showing up when race-based matters affect our community. Baton Rouge is a place where the racial sins of this country are visible. Our church is aware of this, and also our need to consistently address racial issues within our congregation. Creating a safe spiritual space for our Black population is important to us. Our Black members are currently searching for ways to experience Blackness in a way that feeds their spirits and that centers their needs within their lived experiences. Our ministry and larger congregation continues to find creative ways to support and encourage this exploration.
Let me start by making a promise to you that is a lie. I promise to you that during football season, the Saints will not do anything bad until the service is over. That is an official promise from your minister, and I have no power to make it happen. But I promise you, for you being here, Saints are going to do good for the first 30 minutes. If you want to, so this is your dedication for those of you who are fans. If you want to make the Saints win, you may have to just sit here until 3:30 or so. So if they lose, it's on you, it's not on me. Today concludes our three-part sermon series on who we are. Today we will eventually talk about, so I originally titled the service, The Future of Us. It's going to be a little awkward, but I'm going to try to combine three things. Future of us, who we are, and this is the last Sunday before Thanksgiving. For the most part in this service, we're ignoring Thanksgiving because I couldn't figure out how to fit it into the sermon. However, there are hymns that we really only get to sing on Thanksgiving, like that first hymn, which the first one's all about like silos and corn and wheat and things that we don't really do a lot here. So thank you, Lee, for that work on fixing that hymn for us. But they're still good hymns, and I want us to be able to sing them. So we're going to acknowledge Thanksgiving in that way. And I'm going to try to tie it all together to have this sort of general gratitude theme flowing throughout the service of about who we were and where we're going in the future. In a minute, we are going to hear something that you have not heard in almost 2 years. For those of you who are not comfortable, you are welcome to leave during this time, and I don't mean that as like an idle threat. I mean like not everyone is at the same comfort level. So one of the reasons, other than just airflow, that we have the doors propped is that people can come and go as they need, as their safety allows. So after I finish talking, the choir is going to sing in a few minutes. They're going to sing a tune that may be familiar to you, but the words are different. They were written by a member of this church who died about 5 years ago, the Reverend Earl Ramsdell. You should know that the choir is entirely vaccinated. They will sing with their masks on. Our choral director and our music director have researched, sorry, I'm going to do this again, because I still didn't catch the first word. I think it's the Choral Directors Association of America, but one of the words is wrong. Oh, yeah, obviously this is embarrassing. The American Choral Directors Association. Don't trust the Choral Directors Association of America. They're junk. But we are following all the recommendations of the American Choral Directors Association. Also, if we don't sing when we're in the valley of the shadow of COVID, when are we going to sing? So we are going to enjoy this time right now before we have a spike in cases, which I hope will never come. Please remember that our recovery needs to be slow. It takes a long time for us to get everything back. So listen to these words from a beloved church member, one of many beloved church members who've left us with gifts of gratitude and immeasurable joy. Would you join me in a moment of prayer and reflection? The God that we know when we see love and kindness and justice and compassion and gratitude, that mystery named and unnamed, believed in and not, be with us on this day. And help us to be grateful for all of those things we are gaining. Help us to long for those things we've lost. Help us to grieve for those things we've lost. Help us to make it through this season, which we know will be a hard one for many people. And help us be thankful for the ancestors who helped us build this church and build our families and made it so we exist. And help us to build for the next generation so that they may have a world we wished we had. May we do whatever it is we need to do to make this world healthier, to bring more love and kindness into this world. Amen.
In the late 1940s, a small group seeking to establish a liberal religious community in Baton Rouge attended informational sessions on Unitarianism being offered to local college students by Reverend Albert D'Orlando, minister of First Unitarian Church.
Satisfied they had found what they were seeking, they had their first official meeting at a local hotel in the fall of 1951 with an official of the American Unitarian Association and Reverend D'Orlando. 5 of the group signed a charter establishing the Unitarian Fellowship of Baton Rouge.
The Reverend D'Orlando would provide guidance and part-time ministerial services in the early years of the fellowship's formative development.
The reason we decided to do a 3-part sermon series on who we are is because this month, the Ministerial Search Committee, and I see one member of it. Becky, could you wave at everyone? All right. For those of you online, picture the person you just heard talking, waving at everyone. So this is the group looking for your second minister. They have put together what we, in the larger denomination, call the congregational record. Logistically, every congregation in Search right now is writing their own congregational record. They're answering questions about the history of the church, the demographics of the city, how the church and the city interact, the racial, gender, and sexual orientation makeup of the congregation, and what we've done in the last 5 years to help make it a more welcoming, more inclusive congregation. They ask the history of the ministers and why they left. They ask for a history of the budget in the church. And on December 1st, every minister interested in a new church will read these congregational records. Then they will express interest in the churches that they think might be a good fit. Parenthetically, right now, and this is unique for you 1130 folks because you don't normally get the online experience, but you do today. So here's what's going to happen. At some point in the future, so if you're watching this now in the future, it'll be the present for you and will be in the past. But at some point in the future, potential candidates may be watching this service to find out about this church. So thank you for watching. I'm glad you're interested in this church. I hope you like what you see. The congregation would like to shout at you right now in a positive way. So if those of you would like to shout into the future to let this person know that you want them here, go ahead. That's our interim right there. I think you'll like this church. Hopefully you'll turn in your stuff, and we'll have an interview with you in January. All right. Thank you for indulging me in that foolishness. So anyway, in January, the search committee will get the batch of names of ministers interested. They will then start conducting phone or Zoom interviews with them. They will select 3 pre-candidates to bring in. So these are 3 people who could be the minister here. And they will be brought in secret over a weekend to meet the committee, to see the building, to see the city. And after that, one will be selected and will be hired. Got it? Good. There's a lot of information. So winding back now, your search committee has finished one of the most important parts of the search process. Essentially, they wrote a document describing who we are as a church right now, which is not an easy task, because I have no idea who we are as a church right now. We're recovering from a pandemic. I don't know who we are. So they did this now. The Senior Minister Search Committee did this last year. The Assistant Minister Search Committee did this in 2011 to 2012. The Associate Minister Search Committee did this in 96 to 97. Then in 82, a Senior Minister Search Committee did it, and at some point in the 70s and the 60s, this was done again. Think of these as like core samples or snapshots of who the church is right now. And this is an important document. It will be available for you to read online very soon. The problem is the committee who's going to make the website for you to follow updates is the same, and for the ministers to get more information on the church, is the same committee who just spent all this time writing the record. So they're just not ready to put it online yet. But it's gone to the UUA, and in a couple of weeks, all the ministers get to see it. So what I thought I would do is have you hear portions of it throughout the service. So there's going to be 5 of them. You've already heard 2, and you're going to hear 3 more. I'm going to try to tie all this together with Thanksgiving and try to tie it together with who we are and the future of us. So stick with me. But first, we have another non sequitur. It's about the hymn we're singing all of this month, Busca el Amor. It's a song originally written in Spanish. The singer is El Salvadoran? Nicaraguan. He's Nicaraguan. He died in 2010, I believe. If you don't, I know the split screen is kind of small, so if you want, in the teal hymnal, it's 1004. For those of you online, if you have your teal hymnal, which I assume everyone does, but if you don't, you could just Google 1004 Busca el Amor, and I bet you find the lyrics. This is one of a number of hymns in our canon of hymns that have a great chorus and pretty complicated lyrics. In fact, one of the other ones that have a great chorus, and complicated, I don't mean like spiritually complicated, I just mean like a lot of words that are stuck into not as singable as the chorus. Our closing hymn is going to be another one of those too. Great chorus. So I'm going to encourage you, when you sing this, sing along with the verses, but really get into the chorus. And as you sing it, I'd invite you to think about how every year at the Tenebrae service, when we do communion, this church encourages everyone who takes that piece of bread. And we ask you when you eat it to do this for the love of all people. That is a theme woven throughout this church, a commitment to the love of all people. So as you sing this hymn, I'll invite you to try to sing it for the love of all people. So I'll now, if you're at home, sit or stand, whatever you'd like to do. If you're here, I invite you, if you are willing or able, to go ahead and rise.
Examine that heart of yours as you look for the love on your high shelf. Past the pleasure and passion for your own self, for the love that's reaching someone else. Seek out the love in you and find the joy that comes to those who care. Seek out the love in you. It only grows whenever it is shared. Seek out the love in you, in you. Your heart's a chameleon, ever open to change like any flower, spreading out for the sun, petals bursting with power to be love that's reaching someone else. Seek out the love in you and find the joy that comes to those who care. Seek out the love in you. It only grows whenever it is shared. Seek out the love in you, in you.
The minister of congregational life's main focus is the experience of each person in the congregation, from the first-time visitor through the deeply committed long-term member. This position will focus on 3 main areas: connection, deepening, and restoration. First, connection. The minister of congregational life will envision all of the ways members connect with the church and each other. This includes finding a way to uncover or identify the myriad ways that members can connect with each other and with Unitarian Universalism. Next is deepening. The minister of congregational life will provide opportunities for members to deepen their faith and deepen their relationship with the church. Last is restoration. The minister of congregational life will also focus on helping members and the congregation at large toward restoration. This includes pastoral care, restoration of faith, restoration of relationships with the body, with family, with death, etc. It also includes revitalizing our naming project, a project to uncover all of the names of those enslaved on the land that the church currently occupies. We have already found 50 names. The congregation sits on the land that was originally called the Cortana Plantation or the Little Misery Plantation. That is according to a bill of sale we uncovered from the 1850s. The church is also on the Bayou Gula people's land. That tribe has been absorbed into the United Homa Nation, a tribe that is not nationally recognized, probably because of the oil land that is rightfully theirs. The restoration work might include conversations with the United Homa Nation about what restoration looks like with the congregation. This work has not yet been started. The restoration work might also include working with the congregation to help its members have restored relationships with estranged family and friends. It might also include helping the congregation understand ways in which its own behaviors toward different races, cultures, and identities need to be changed and ultimately restored. This is the point where we had to stop the senior minister from elaborating. We are excited about this position, and he keeps listing more and more ideas about what the position could be.
So you should know I wrote that part. And when we were talking about, when the committee met, talking about whether it should be included or not, Eric pointed out, in the most collegially respectful way, any human being could say this, but you know, it's a little weird to put that in there, but working with Nathan's going to be a little weird, so he didn't, these are my words, not his. So you got to kind of know what you're getting in for. That job description comes out of what you told us during Visioning Week. So you remember back in September, the strategic planning and the search committees met with you to ask your vision for the church. And you said you felt disconnected from the church, which is probably in some ways a reflection on our response to the pandemic. You wanted the church to offer you deeper connections to your own faith. And you wanted a way to have some sort of restoration with the damage you saw in the world. We think that minister will do that. Well, I mean, we think the minister will be able to lead those areas. I don't know that any one person can do those three things, but can take on those ministry areas of the church. When we were thinking of the future of us, I have to paint a negative picture first. And I've been trying to figure out how to communicate this to you for a few months now in a way that feels affirming and hopeful, but it's important you know the environment we live in. So churches all over the country are losing ministers in record numbers. Many churches are not able to handle the stresses of the shutdown and the pandemic. Some churches are acting in open defiance of the health guidelines. So they'll just completely ignore the mitigation measures in ways that are just either defiant of the leadership or actually make each other sick. Many colleagues are reporting of just mean congregants, just being real mean to them and mean to the leadership and undercutting each other. And this is pretty common in churches, actually. The healthier the church, the less common it is. But people are going to act like people. The problem with the church is they care about it more, so they act like it more. So in a church that's healthy like this one, there's a place for that anger and resentment to go, but in unhealthier church systems, they really push at the minister or the leadership in an undermining way. This always happens, but this year it's more than I've ever heard of. Is it more than you've ever heard of? Yeah. And ministers are leaving the parish or the ministry altogether in record numbers. Also, churches are having a hard time making budgets, unlike we've ever heard. And so I've been trying to describe, and this is not just Unitarian Universalist churches. This is across sort of all of the mainline Protestant denominations, only because I haven't read about the other ones. And I've been trying to find a way to describe this, and then it occurred to me today that I could do it maybe better through football. So I promise I can. So right now there's about 110 or so Division I college football programs in the country. Usually what happens is at the end of the season, the ones who did poorly, if the coach has been there a while and they keep doing poorly, they fire the coaches. And and everyone sort of swaps around coaches. As of this week, I believe 11 coaches have already been fired. So that's about 10% in the country, and the season isn't even over. One of the ones that was fired this week, over the last 2 years, because last year was a weird COVID season where everyone had it was just a weird year. He had coached, I think, a total of 10 games, and they already fired him. And this cost schools millions of dollars to fire the coaches. Different conversation, a different day. But the point is, everyone seems to be agitated and mad and unhappy with the way things are going in institutions. So this is just sort of another example of what I'm seeing within the ministry in a way that may not provoke the anxiety of a congregation. So there's every reason to think that this church would go down that same path, except you didn't. Except you have been kind to each other. You have been nice to each other. You've respected the guidelines that your leadership has put into place. And when you disagreed with a spiritual maturity that is refreshing. And you've been generous. We are 200 families deciding to pledge to this church away from having the best pledge drive, best pledge offering we have had in this church in its history. This church is looking to add a minister at a time when most churches are cutting their ministers. And this is no small feat. You did this. We will continue to do this. All of this is to say that in a minute when I describe the future of us, I can honestly predict that the future looks good. All right, so non sequitur number 3. This one I just forgot to put in until I realized yesterday what tomorrow was for me. So 1 year ago tomorrow, this church gave me a great gift. You voted to call me as your senior minister. And I just wanted to acknowledge that anniversary as an act of gratitude. But also to acknowledge where we were versus where we are now. Last year, I was incredibly nervous. So a show of hands, how many of you have ever had to have hundreds of people vote on your job? Yeah, well, 2 of us. Some of the professors know this. I don't recommend it. It's not great. It's just not fun. But so last year I was incredibly nervous. I decided, because the way it worked is I preached a sermon, I met with all of you for a week, I preached another sermon, and you voted on whether or not I would be here or not. So I was nervous, so I walked to church just to kind of calm my nerves before leading worship, a worship that was 3 people, me, Lee, and whoever was in the sound booth that day. Then I walked home while you started your online congregational meeting. And I wasn't supposed to be there by design, so you could discuss whether or not you wanted to call me as your minister. Most ministers throughout the entire history of human beings, when they were called to a church, knew that the people would be meeting together in the same space, or at least writing in their thoughts. Except for any minister called within the last 2 years. And I was so worried about how we would hold a congregational meeting with people being so perpetually distracted by the fear of this pandemic and the fact that Zoom can really just be exhausting. So I was worried we would even make a quorum to have the vote. I think like 150 of you showed up. It was some absurd number. When I got home, you had already started the meeting, and I wasn't able to know what happens. And toward the end of the meeting, I was invited to come in on the call, to come in and find out how the vote went. So I logged in, and God bless Zoom. I think it was Donna told me, or maybe it was someone else on the search committee, someone on the search committee told me, but they told me what the results were while I was still connecting audio. So I didn't hear what y'all had voted, and I couldn't get anyone's attention because everyone was sort of clapping and cheering. I share all of this to say I wished we could have been together in person to make that happen, but we couldn't. And I am so glad to be together with you in person. And I'm hopeful we get to continue to keep doing, well, we're going to keep doing it, whether we're inside or outside, and you're just going to have to wear a lot of jackets. But we're at a different place now than we were a year ago, and I think we need to acknowledge that.
And it's an opportunity to acknowledge in a tangible way our coming together as a community in the sanctuary and online both, as we prepare to receive the morning's offering, the afternoon's offering, not only for the continued good works of this congregation, but also, as we are doing every Sunday, sharing our offering with an organization in the community that's doing good works in harmony with our Unitarian Universalist values. Every Sunday in the month of November, we're sharing it with Diversity House. We've got a link to more information about what they're doing in our community on our church website. You can also go back and look at last week's service online on YouTube, where we had a short video about it. In the support of them and out of gratitude for all that is good about this community, the offering is now gratefully received.
Our small band of founders were drawn to and chose Unitarianism because they found it to be intentional about placing social and political issues within religious context. Social and racial justice were thus woven into the fabric of our church from its beginning. We strive to identify and eradicate all forms of prejudice, institutional racism, and inequality to create a more just, unified, and loving community. In the late 1950s, Baton Rouge Unitarians marched in picket lines at the state capitol to keep public schools open. In the 1960s, members joined freedom marches, and some joined the Peace Corps. Public school desegregation work continued in the 1970s and 1980s. Other issues at those times were voter registration, capital punishment, open housing, the environment, women's rights, abortion rights, gun control, and LGBTQ rights. In 1986, Reverend Steve Crump was one of the founding ministers, and our church a founding member of the city's first interfaith organization, which has as its guiding principles the cultivation of unity, justice, and peace.
A couple of logistics I wanted to tell you. We usually budget, in the before times, we budgeted 15 to 18,000 for plate. During the pandemic, we got about 2,000 on the plate. Since we've been back open, and remember, we're not at full capacity by design, and I don't think we could hit it anyway because I don't think people are ready. But we're looking at 30 or 40 people per service, plus the online folks. We're getting about 1,000 a month that we're sharing with, I don't exactly know how the math works in my head because I have it written down, but we're getting more than 1,000 a month in the plate since we've been back, which is just remarkable. I mean, we're on the pace with less people in attendance to matching what we had before. So I just wanted to name it. Now, I don't know how many of you knew Mark Ott. He was He was a long-term church member, and he died a couple of years ago. I wrote this down. I don't know how to describe it. I've never met a man who squeezed more words into a sentence. I mean that in the most loving way possible. So remember, this church only had one minister for the decade of the 2000s. I came here in 2012. A few months in, he pulled me and Steve, the former senior minister, aside, and he said that all the vectors in this church, for the first time in a long time, were pointing in the right direction. I think about that prediction a lot. At the time he said it, the church had just survived a major conflict. It had survived Hurricanes Katrina, Rita, and Gustav. And this was maybe the first time he'd seen stability in his church for a while. We'd completed a capital drive and we were on what looked like a long path towards strong growth. And we had a good 5 years of doing that, including making through that awful summer in 2016. And then in 2018, Steve announced he would retire. And very few churches grow during a ministerial transition. And very few churches grow during a pandemic and a shutdown. So we didn't have the same, so we sort of plateaued on our growth, membership number-wise at least. But when I look at this church and how it held each other together, how it weathered what we've been through, I see these vectors pointing in the good direction again. We are looking for a minister when many churches cannot. Remember, we are serving 5 gathered congregations. We are serving 5 congregations. We're serving the 9 o'clock service gathered congregation, the 11:30 gathered congregation, the families who do not feel like they have access to the church yet, the online congregation, and those who are members of the church who we have not seen yet. Every week I keep a tab of sort of each time we've had a new person and when they're ready to add themselves to the homecoming wall. Many churches can barely handle having one service every week. And so I see the future of us as strong because the past of us was strong and we always built for growth. And here's the last non sequitur that I'm trying to stick in because there's a lot of stuff about how good the church is and how great we were and the history, so and what we're doing with as a congregation as we look for a minister. But you all are about to go to Thanksgiving, and that is probably going to be challenging for a bunch of you. I'm sure a lot of you are going to have conversations about family and friends about vaccination status. And I know that many of us are going to struggle with different ideologies and theologies and worldviews. And I know that some of those worldviews are dangerous and are making us sick. But this has been true long before the pandemic. It's just given us an opportunity to put a finger on those worldviews that can be toxic. Shaming someone will not get them the vaccine. Being angry at someone will probably not get them the vaccine. You never change ideologies by shame or by anger. Let me pause right here and also say, I'd read a sociologist who studies this, and she said that people avoid the vaccine for two reasons: purity or liberty. Either they want their body to stay pure and they're concerned about contaminants in the vaccine, or liberty, they don't want someone else telling them what to do. So as you're trying to figure out your family and friends, and if they have resistance to the vaccine, to really figure out if it's liberty or purity may help. That wasn't in here, I don't know why, but I wanted you to hear it because it's been bouncing around in my head. They drew a circle and shut me out, a heretic, a rebel, a thing to flout, but love and I had the wit to win. We drew a circle and took them in. These next 2 months are the 2 months that are the strongest opportunity for our church to have a positive influence on the world. We always, in Unitarian Universalism in general, and in this church also, are always focused on them out there. Either those are the people we're going to help, or those are the people we want to avoid being around. And this shows up in this idea that this is a sanctuary and we're all like-minded people, which is not true. It is a sanctuary, but it's not true that we're all like-minded. And implied in this idea that we're a sanctuary is that everywhere else is unsafe. And everywhere else is our family and our friends and our neighbors. And while there are many things that our friends and families and neighbors do that are unsafe, we are them and they are us. And they are the people that we have the most influence over. The future of our faith and the future of this congregation is laid out by how this congregation helps its family and friends over Thanksgiving and Christmas make the world healthier, better, and more whole. Everything we do here as an institution, get new ministers, build new buildings, none of that matters if it isn't helping us be the people who make the world better. So while I see the future of us as a bright one, it's bright because you made it bright. We could hoard our gifts, it's safer to do that, or we could build bigger. We could build for growth. We can make a space at the dinner table for our family and friends who are trapped under crumbling theologies that tell them they are wicked and that they deserve to suffer and to be sick. Make no mistake that us being together is important, and what we are building together is vital. Go make this a better world.
After almost 70 years, the Unitarian Church of Baton Rouge is the largest congregation in the state and one of the largest in the southern region of the UUA. We remain a refuge, home, and community for those who seek to understand themselves and their spiritual values to work together to help make this a better world.
I invite you to rise to sing our closing hymn. Those online, sing out too.
Here in reverence now we gather for the blessings we have known, with a pledge to one another that we journey not alone. Joy and sorrow make us wise, kin to all that lives and dies. Love calls us on. Love calls us on. Words and deeds of those before us waken here and our voices in the chorus of creation's living song. Courage bids us lift our eyes upward to the shining skies. Hope calls us on. Hope calls us on. Loyal guides in love and duty, lead us with the trusted light. Blessed are they whose inward beauty shows a path of truth and right. Honor is their earthly prize. By their work we realize faith calls us on. Faith calls us on. We have shared a radiant hour when the truth has made us free, and the Spirit's gracious power dreamed of good that yet shall be. Bright the path before us lies. Joyful pilgrims now we rise. Life calls us on. Life calls us on.
Take courage, friends. The way is often hard, the path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone. Go in peace, go in love. Amen.